Okay, welcome to another class on the laws of blessings, the order of blessings. We are up to chapter 8 in the Alter Rebbe's Seder Birchas Hanehenin. We hope to cover tonight chapter 8 and chapter 9. Chapter 8 deals with the after blessing. The after blessing that we say after benching, after eating bread, we call the benching, which is the longer Birchas Hamazon. You have the what we call over here the Me'ain Gimel, which is like we call the Alamichia, the shorter, longer blessing. Then you have the shorter blessing, the Boyer of Fashis, right? So after having snacks like shahakol or fruits that aren't the 7 species of fruits of Israel, we say the shorter blessing, the Boyer of Fashis. Then after eating mizonos, cake and cookies, wine, or any of the 5 fruits that Israel was blessed with, we say the Al HaMichya or Al Ha'etz, the longer one. And then when we have bread, we say the longer after blessing. So we discussed in this in chapter 8 how much does a person have to eat in order to be obligated to make the after blessing. Okay, so kind of out of order. I mean, you could jump all the way to Halacha 10. Halacha 10 tells us in chapter 8 that when it comes to a blessing which we say before we eat, there's no measurement, there's no limit, there's no minimum. Even you take a little sip of water, you have a little bite of a half a raisin, you already have to make a blessing. So let's read actually 10 inside. We're jumping here out of order. All of the above applies with regard to the blessing recited after partaking of food or drink. In contrast, there is no required measure for the blessing recited before eating or drinking. Instead, even the slightest taste of food or drink requires the blessing because it is forbidden to derive satisfaction from this world without first reciting a blessing. Right? So Halacha 10 tells us that you can derive any satisfaction, even a little bit of satisfaction, right? There's no measurement where we say, oh, this is the amount of satisfaction I am forbidden to derive from the world without blessing Hashem. No, anything you have to bless Hashem, which is a powerful lesson, right? Much as the lesson of making blessings, but we have to recognize when it comes to having pleasure from God's world, even a small amount of pleasure is something that's worth making a blessing. Yeah, thank God for it. However, the rest of the chapter 8, deals with the after blessing. For the after blessing, there the mitzvah of an after blessing, whether it is biblical or whether it is rabbinic, there is a measurement. There's a minimum. Why? Because over there, my understanding, the reason is, doesn't say clearly inside, is because it says in the Torah of Achalta, V'savata uveirach eat, you should be satiated, and you will bless. So first of all, we see already the Torah tells us that the after blessing is not on anything. You have to be satiated. You have to be filled. You have to eat something that fills you up, right? So we see already that the Torah tells us a blessing after is there's a measurement. There's a requirement. There's a minimum requirement. That's first of all. Now, obviously, we already learned earlier that rabbinically, we don't only make an after blessing if we are satiated, right? We even make a blessing if we're not satiated. That's a rabbinic benching. Nevertheless, I think we kind of see already that's not on, there's a requirement. But also, I think this enactment, this takana, this institution that the rabbis instituted that we should make an after blessing, they said it has to be something which is like considered it should be considered eating according to the Torah. And we find this many times when the Torah tells us we have to eat something. To do a mitzvah of eating, there's a minimum requirement of how much a person has to eat in a certain amount of time for it to be considered eating. For example, not just in regards to blessings, in regards to which other mitzvah do we have? A biblical mitzvah to eat. What do we have?
Biblical mitzvah? Bread.
When's there a biblical mitzvah to eat bread?
Shabbos.
No biblical mitzvah to eat bread on Shabbos.
Oh,
It's a rabbinic. Pesach, matzah, right? Matzah is a biblical mitzvah to eat matzah on the night of Pesach. There's no mitzvah to eat matzah all 7 days. There's a prohibition against eating chametz, but there's a mitzvah to eat matzah on the night of Pesach. That's the mitzvah. And I see the Patritza here. Welcome.
All right, good to be here.
Great. So we're talking about the laws of making an after blessing, and we are introducing here the halacha that there is a minimum requirement a person must eat in order to be chayav, in order to be obligated to make an after blessing.
Okay.
So although when it comes to making the blessing before we eat, the sha'akol, the mizonos, the alpha 8, the hadam, whatever it is, bar priya 8, those do not have a minimum. Even having a little bit of a small bite, small sip, you have to make a bracha because we are benefiting from Hashem's world. But for the after blessing, there is a minimum. And one of the reasons that we're given to this is because when the Torah tells us to eat, there's always a requirement of how much a person has to eat in a certain amount of time. So, for example, eating matzah on the night of Pesach, you can't just eat a little bit of matzah. That has a requirement. You have to eat a kazayas. Eating in the sukkah, right? The Torah says you have to eat in the sukkah. So there's a requirement how much a person has to eat. So that is what we're going to deal with tonight. How much and how fast does a person have to eat? What the minimum requirement in order to be obligated to make an after blessing? So we are in chapter 8 and Seder Birchas Hanehenin. Let's read this inside.
We're going back to Al.
I'm going back to Al, yeah. Beginning of chapter 8. One is required to recite a blessing after partaking a food or drink, bracha achrona, only when he partakes of a minimum measure. For such a blessing is not recited after eating or drinking unless one partakes of an amount of food fit described as eating rather than tasting. Or one drinks an amount fit to describe as drinking, right? Less than that, you're tasting, you're not eating. So what is the amount? Partaking of less than an olive-sized portion, which is a kazayas, is never considered eating, and how do you pronounce this? Imbibing less than a revius halug, a fourth of a lug, the volume of we'll stop there for a moment, right? So what is eating? Eating is an olive, less than an olive-sized portion is not considered eating. Okay? So if I eat less than a kazayas, I don't make an after blessing. Now, what exactly is this size, the kazayas? In volume, it's about just over 1 fluid ounce. Okay, just about a fluid ounce at an ounce of volume, which means if you would crush, not in weight, which means if you would grind up the food and fill it up to a measuring cup, it will reach an ounce, right? So just keep that in mind, right? The measurements over here are not weight; they're volume, right? So an ounce could be weight, or an ounce could be in volume, right? But not always the same. Water is the only liquid beverage that is exactly the same. An ounce of water weighs an ounce. But any other food or beverage is not, either they're heavier or they're lighter. So if I take a pretzel, I eat 1 pretzel, how do I know if this pretzel is a kazayas? So I have to estimate that if I would grind this pretzel, would it fill up an ounce? If it would, then I make an after blessing. If it wouldn't, then I don't make an after blessing. So that is in regards to eating. Now, how much do I have to drink? In regards to drinking, there's a shear, a measurement that's called a revius. A revius means a fourth, a quarter, a fourth. A fourth of what? The fourth of a lug. A lug, a revius is just about, different opinions, 2.9 is the smallest opinion. 2.9, 3.5, different opinions. Just around 3 ounces. Okay, so you have 1 ounce for eating and 3 ounces for drinking. Okay. Now, even if one drink is sharp, strong beverages of which people ordinarily drink only a small amount, for example, some alcoholic beverages, the satisfaction that you receive from drinking the small amount is not considered significant enough to warrant a blessing unless he drank the measure for partaking of all beverages, which is a revi. So even if I'm sipping a l'chaim, have a little, we had last week Jack Daniels, right? Or you have whatever, you have some Smirnoff, or you have any other drink, which it is the common custom that the way we drink this drink is to take a sip. We don't drink a full revius, you don't drink a cup of this, you don't drink 3 ounces of it. So drink 3 ounces of it, right? So even those drinks, if we're drinking less than the revius, we don't make an after blessing. Now, there's a dispute about wine. Is wine different? Some say that wine, even after a kazayas of wine, which is 1 ounce, you already have to make an after blessing. Because wine is chashuv, wine is different, right? So again, there are 2 opinions in regards to wine. One opinion says wine is like any other beverage where you have to drink at least 3 ounces, a revius, in order to be obligated in an after blessing. The second opinion says that for wine, even after drinking 1 ounce, which is a kazayas, a third of a revius, you already have to make an after. So what should you do? Do it. That says you should always try to stay out of machlekes. So either drink more than a revius, or drink less than a kazayas. Because less than a kazayas, you for sure don't have to make an after blessing. More than a revius or more, you for sure do have to make an after blessing. The question really is, if I drink between 1 and 3 ounces. So stay away from it, don't drink it. If you drink an ounce and a half, have some more wine. Or have another beverage, drink some more. If you're nothing else, that's all you did, all you drank is between the 2 shiurim, then we say this, the general rule, the suffix brachis lahaka, that when in doubt, we are lenient and we do not make an after blessing. So that is the end of halacha 1. Yes, Avram, good to see you.
Good to see you. Had one question. I just came in, but it was on my mind.
Yeah.
Suppose you're traveling and you drink more than, say, 3 ounces. You had enough to do a broker. So,
yeah.
But you're taking a sip here and there, here and there, and here and there. So what if the time expires to 70 minutes?
Avram, you came right in time for halacha beis.
And that's what it is.
So let's learn halacha beis. Halacha beis talks about the time, right? That if I take a sip now, I take a sip in a minute, and a sip in another 5 minutes. Or if I'm eating, I'm nibbling, right? I'm nibbling.
I just finished doing that. That's why.
A raisin or a chocolate chip or whatever. And then, as time goes on, I'm sitting by, if I bring it, and then come just like, having some peanuts on the table, and I'm just kind of taking in 1 or 2 peanuts every minute. And altogether, it's more than a kazayas or more than a revius of beverage. Do they combine? Do they not combine? How does it work? So we'll talk about a time frame. They have to be eaten within a certain time. Let's read this inside in halacha 2. The following rules apply if one ate the equivalent of half an olive-sized portion, paused some, and then ate the equivalent of another half of an olive-sized portion. So you ate a half kazayas, you took some time off, and then you ate another half kazayas. If more time than is needed to eat a pras, It's called Kidei Achilas Pras. The time it takes to eat a half a loaf of bread that comprises the volume of 6 egg-sized portions. Now, what exactly does that mean on our clock? What is the time? So again, various opinions. Roughly 3 to 4 minutes. Some say even 5 or 6 minutes. But let's say 3 or 4 minutes, right? The many different opinions of what is that exact time. Okay, so let's say we'll just go with 4 minutes. Okay, let's say 4 minutes. If 4 minutes pass between my first half of kazayas and my second half kazayas, right? Elapsed between the beginning of the first time he ate and the end of the second time he ate. The 2 times he ate are not combined with each other. Thus, he is not required to recite a blessing after eating. This ruling also applies even if one did not interrupt his eating at all, but took this amount of time from when he began eating an olive-sized portion until he concluded. So, not necessarily doesn't mean that you actually took some time. It could be even if you're eating, you're constantly chewing and swallowing for the entire 5 minutes, or whatever. But more than 4 minutes pass from the beginning of eating to the of this shear, or this measurement of kazayas, to the end of eating the kazayas. They don't combine. They don't combine. It has to be eaten within the shear. Now, this is, by the way, not only in regards to the laws of blessings. This is in regards to any time you have to eat something, and there's a mitzvah to eat. Matzah, for example, right? In order to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on the night of Pesach, you have to eat a kazayas, minimum a kazayas of matzah, but not just enough to sit there for 20 minutes and munching on a piece of matzah. You have to make sure you eat this kazayas, third of a matzah or half a matzah, whatever it is, within those few minutes. Now, 4 minutes is a little bit of a challenge to eat half a matzah in 4 minutes, but some opinions say it could be 6, 7, 8 minutes. Whatever. Obviously, you can do. My point is, you're supposed to try to eat within this time frame. Same thing with the Shabbos meal. You're supposed to eat challah at a Shabbos meal. You're supposed to, or let's say eating in a sukkah, you're supposed to eat in a sukkah. You have to make sure you can't just nibble on some food. You have to eat the bread or the mezainis within this time frame as well. Now, once you ate the kazayas within the time frame, you could sit and eat as much as you want for hours on end, right? But we're talking about once you hit kazayas within the time frame, now you're obligated to have the blessing. The rest you could do whatever. You could take your time to eat, but you want to make sure you eat. Now, generally, it's not very hard to eat a kazayas within 3-4 minutes, right? Generally, you're eating a meal, you're eating a snack. Generally, it happens. But just to keep in mind, if you're having a very light snack, a little pretzel over here, you're having some raisins over here, and it's less than a kazayas, then it could be a problem. Now, we didn't get to beverages yet. So, Rob, I know you asked about drinking. Okay, we didn't get to drinking yet. So far with eating, we know that eating, you have to have eating from beginning to the end of this, whichever, meaning, even if I ate a half a kazayas now, that's fine. But my next bite could be a kazayas within that time.
So real quick on that, if you're gonna have a zonas, it seems like it's implying that you want to make sure to eat that minimum amount for an after bracha, just to have that as a priority.
So again,
to make sure that you eat that amount if you're gonna have a zonas per se, to make sure that you eat that minimum.
So make sure you make that. Yeah. Again, generally, most time, I'm saying an ounce of even a volume, an ounce of mezainis. You're talking about a slice of cake. I'm saying it's already a kazayas. I'm saying whatever. Look at maybe
arugula.
Arugula. I'm assuming these things are kazayas. You got to look at the what. But especially if you're eating a meal. But just keep in mind, if you have a little bite, I want to make sure I'm doing everything right. I want to make it after blessing. No. If you're even in doubt, if you ate the right amount, suffik brachas lahakil, right? When you're in doubt, we're lenient. So only if you are sure that you ate the amount of a kazayas within these few minutes, then you make that.
Right. But But best practice, is it seen as best practice to try to reach that threshold?
Yeah, we do try to make the blessing, right? We do try to put ourselves in that situation. So it doesn't say clearly here, by the way. So, I mean, I think some people argue, they say, what do you mean? No, I didn't eat enough, so I don't have to make a blessing. And I don't think there's any halacha that says that you can't do it, but I think you try to make blessing. And also, I'm not sure if it's in here, but it says that a person should try to make at least 100 blessings every day. So it's an opportunity to make. So we try. Also, we want to bless Hashem for what we ate, right? So we don't look at blessing as a burden. Oh, I have to bless Hashem. We look at it as a mitzvah, an opportunity. So obviously, we try to eat the amount and make that blessing. I'm going to skip to Halacha 6. Okay, and this is in regards to drinking. What is the time frame for drinking? And we'll see that we'll have two opinions what the time frame is, and then we'll see what the halacha is.